My guest today is Professor Kanaka Rajan, who's Associate Professor of Neurobiology at Harvard Medical School and a founding faculty member of the Kempner Institute for the Study of Natural and Artificial Intelligence at Harvard University. Her research seeks to understand how important cognitive functions, such as learning, remembering, and deciding, emerge from the cooperative activity of multi-scale neural processes. Welcome, Kanaka.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. So I got a couple of your very interesting papers, recent papers, and I want to start with deep RL needs, deep behavior analysis, exploring implicit planning by model-free agents in open-ended environments. So you say here in abstract, understanding the behavior of deep reinforcement learning, DRL, agents, particularly as task and agent sophistication increase, requires more than simple comparison of reward curves, yet standard methods for behavioral analysis remain underdeveloped in DRL. We apply tools from neuroscience and ethology to study DRL agents in a novel, complex, partially observable environment designed to capture key aspects of real-world animal foraging, including sparse, depleting resource patches, predator threats, and spatially extended arenas. Yeah, this is really interesting, Kanaka. So I don't really have any background in neuroscience, but I've done some work in AI stuff over the past 30 years. Things seem to go up and down over time. And this is really interesting in the sense that we have biological systems. So let me just set the context for this. So foraging, if I understand this correctly, this is animal behavior, right? So they go out and they seek food
Right.
in some sort of space-time context,
That's right.
possibly limited space-time context, right?
That's right.
So that's what we call foraging. And then we could actually let some sort of a DRL agent
That's right.
sort of simulate the animal's behavior. Is that what you're trying to do?
That's right. That's right. So foraging for us was a natural choice because it incorporates several aspects of intelligence that we sort of seek to understand the foundations of. So for example, if you wanted to just go out and forage, there's, rather than being operated by disembodied neurons that exist in a bag of which is a bag of neurons, right? Instead of that sort of understanding of brains, the field is now moving towards agent-based models in which animals, those bags of neurons are present in broader contexts than we've been traditionally used to thinking about them. And
Yeah.
so that includes everything from the environment, which needs to be away from these simple T-maze kind of tasks we were thinking about. The agent needs to be immersed in the environment and function in closed loop with the environment. So for a long time, we were building models of the brain like it was a light bulb, right? Like inputs come in, something happens. Inputs don't come in, nothing happens. But I mean, now that we understand more of it, what I'm saying sounds a little bit silly, but it has taken a scientific leap to be able to go into agent models and then try to understand both the foundations of biological intelligence and artificial intelligence by putting these agents in immersive environments and working in closed loop in these large sort of foraging settings. And so what this paper seeks to do is to say, well, if you model an artificial agent such that its behavior resembles that of animals or humans in a regular environment, there are no tasks, right? It's not like my talking to you has many repeats of a T-maze. In fact, my talking to you is in some abstract way an information-seeking kind of paradigm, right? And so when agents function like this, so you can build these agents. Question remains, how do you make sense of what these agents are learning? And if what these agents are learning has something to do with the way that biological intelligence works, then we've really gotten to something there, right? We've gotten to a convergent evolution kind of thing where where neuroscience and artificial intelligence are really talking to each other in this common framework. So I think that was sort of the conceptual goal of this paper.
Yeah. So the larger question for me, Kanaka, is that what does learning mean? Um, so what do we mean by learning?
So animals and everything intelligent has evolved by taking something like a concept that you want to do well on, right? Like a task that you want to excel on. An animal is born with a lot of intelligence baked in, but it's a terrible hunter. It gets eaten very quickly unless it simulates how to
So
hunt or
there's an
how to
objective
survive.
function. There's an
There's an
objective function of
objective.
some sort. Yeah, okay.
But it's a very complex objective function. It's a
Yeah.
multidimensional objective function, and they're not typically optimizing one particular objective, right?
Yeah.
So typically, artificial agents are trained in very to be tongue-in-cheek about this, artificial settings in which there's like this, there's many tasks. At the end of the task, you figure out whether you've done well or not, and then an error is backpropagated and changes the entire brain. That is not how animals and humans learn. Animals and humans learn by breaking down concepts into modules and building blocks, learning them sequentially, assembling them. And while learning, they're also present in these larger environmental, sometimes social contexts. And so putting artificial agents in similar settings like animals and humans will get artificial agents also to grapple with the diversity of objectives that they need to simultaneously balance. So, for example, hunger, a predatory drive, seeking explicit reward for food. And then, we can do all this, right? We have the engineering wherewithal to imagine a menu of possible incentives and then hard engineer something in that does that one task perfectly well. That's not learning, though. That's engineering it.
Right.
Learning is, have you incorporated the minimum set of constraints into this agent so it does something beyond the training set?
So is learning, sorry to interrupt, Kanaka, is learning sort of a little bit of an optimization?
Well,
process?
you asked this already. So yes, it is, but it's not one where I can just write down an equation with a least squares sort of minimization function, because that lost landscape is complicated. And in some cases, for animals and humans, sometimes artificial agents that have been engineered a certain way, we don't know what that objective is.
Yeah, I mean, this is so fascinating. So so you're letting this DRL agents into some sort of a context.
Correct.
And you run this multiple times. And over time, they seem to learn, quote unquote.
That's right.
They're doing some sort of optimization, let's say.
Correct.
So they have an objective. They don't want to be eaten by a predator. They want to get food, water, whatever.
That's right.
And they want to probably minimize the distance they have to travel. I don't know if that's part of the objective function. So over time, they come to some heuristics, let me call it that way,
Okay.
that is sort of optimum for them to operate on. Is that what's happening?
So that is what we thought was happening.
Yeah.
So we would have been very happy. So we've done a few things with these artificial agents, right? We've taken them and put them in environments that are much larger than the typical DRL agent is. So there's that piece. The other is we have restricted ourselves to architectures that are actually much simpler than the architectures that are traditionally used in cutting edge ML. So cutting edge ML operates with transformer models, state space models, these absolute powerhouses, right? We're taking RNNs where I can write down the equation for you. It's a one differential equation. And if I want to get fancy about the kind of RNN, it's 3 nested differential equations, right? So, and the reason we did this is interpretability, because then I can take the pieces apart. But B, it's also reminiscent of some of the architectures that are present in biological agents.
Yeah.
So we've done this. Okay. So having done all this, what we thought would happen is, well, first of all, we didn't know that it was going to work at all. Like, would this agent be able to survive multiple iterations in this large environment with partial observability? It was good that it did. Okay. So in order to So that's only the forward engineering problem, right? That's saying, like, if I had to say, aha, that's basically just the part. The key here now is to say, well, why did the simple agent, in which I did not put in a map, I did not put in any sort of explicit coordinate system. For example, in animals and humans, there's grid cells that tile spatial locations that are relevant to the performance of a task in environmental coordinates. We didn't put any of that here. It's kind of a homogeneous and small-sized RNN. So now we want to understand, if we take this apart, what do we learn about, first of all, did the agent do anything more than it was trained to do? Answer is yes. This agent, surprisingly to us, by the way, astonishingly, developed longer duration map building and planning abilities that we hadn't engineered in. So that's very cool already that it did that through the process of shaping that we did during the learning. So when you asked me previously about the learning, it's this thing, right? Like of saying on every iteration while the agent is being trained, we're changing the structure of the environment it's exposed to. So we're putting it through a quote unquote curriculum in order for it to get to learn by optimizing something. So then we go, okay, so it has learned this, long duration behavior that we didn't explicitly train in. Again, that's still half the part. If I were only an engineer, I'd be happy with this, but I'm not. I'm a neurobiologist. So I now want to say, but why? What in the representations of this artificial agent allowed this? And if an agent with so few neurons, without an explicit map or grid cell module, in kind of a relatively impoverished artificial environment compared to the environments these real animals and humans function in, can do this amazing thing, then why did we need all the bells and whistles of the biophysics that real animals and humans have? So it's this part, like completing the reverse engineering problem, that completes the aha for us.
I mean, complexity brings noise as well. So in some sense, simplifying the problem always is useful. But I have a couple of questions for you. So we know that mice, for instance, have place cells, sort of a little bit like a GPS system. Your DRL agents don't have anything like that, right?
No, so we didn't put it in. So that's what I was saying before. We didn't put in anything like in 3 dimensions, something that would, so the extension of place cells is grid cells. So we didn't put in anything like that explicitly. So now we're starting to ask the question, well, so in the next iteration of a forage world, what we're doing with these DRL agents is to say, well, now we're going to put in a grid cell-like module or a few place cells, explicitly encode into the ability of a few neuron-like units, encoding for specific spatial locations, be it
using GPS or something else.
Using the coordinate system
or LiDAR or something like that.
Well, we could put them in the virtual environment, right? So this is all virtual, so that you didn't really need the LiDAR in the real environment.
That's right.
So we're not really embodying them in the robotic sense. This is all still virtual.
Yes.
So we want to do that and see if that piece was really necessary or just an accident of evolution. Or are there multiple ways to skin this cat? Are there multiple ways to solve this partial observable navigation environment? One with the GPS system that nature really has, and one without that we seem to have stumbled upon.
Oh, okay. So that's really interesting. And so, I mean, one extreme view might be the place cells and the GPS system, as we call it, is an evolutionary mistake in some ways, because it should actually lead you down blind alleys many times. So this goes back to the complexity to the simplicity question. So you take an agent, you let that agent free in a space-time context, and run multiple experiments. I mean, that is where AI is heading nowadays, I think. I don't know a lot about it, but run multiple experiments. And what you're arguing here, if I understand you correctly, Kanaka, is that there are emerging phenomenon that looks like knowledge, learning, planning, all that stuff, right?
That's right.
Just fascinating,
Which is incredible. So in fact, I would go a step further. In fact, I think that a lot of how we understand things like cognitive flexibility, right? Like what makes us special? the fact that I'm able to have this conversation with you while keeping an eye on the time, while like noticing this little patch of greenery outside, we're able to do all of this, right? If I
Yeah.
had to say, as an engineer, how would I understand cognitive flexibility? Well, first of all,
Mm.
you would also ask, why do we care about cognitive flexibility? Because we're all aging at the same rate. Um, and then, loss of cognitive flexibility or cognitive inflexibility is a sign of many neuropsychiatric illnesses and so forth. So that's
Yeah.
the why of it. But saying our understanding of cognitive flexibility, these abilities, right, of map planning, this emergent knowledge, or even intelligence, I may go so far as to say
Mm.
that cognitive flexibility, our attempts to understand cognitive flexibility have all come from focused attempts
Mm.
to engineer a solution to that problem. We imagined a mechanism, often something like take an RNN or take a neural network model and train it to be a multitasking model, for example, right? And then hope that maybe multitasking is the same as cognitive flexibility if I squint hard enough.
Mm.
And that's how we've tried to solve the problem.
Yeah.
Instead, what we're now slowly finding is by just training these agents through a process that resembles, and I'm saying notionally resembles,
Mm.
the kind of process that animals and humans go through while we're learning something,
Mm.
systematically increasing the difficulty of their problems, embedding them in social settings with other agents, a paper that we're currently working on that's not part of today's discussion. But anyway,
Yeah.
just enriching or broadening the context within which agents operate.
Mm.
Cognitive flexibility seems to be a consequence or almost emerges from it.
Mm. So
So,
let me
so,
sorry to
so, so to
yeah,
come
go
back to
ahead.
your place cell
Yeah, yeah,
question, right?
yeah,
I think it's not an evolutionary accident so much as
yeah.
another solution.
Another
So,
solution, yeah,
if the goal was just cognitive flexibility by broadening the context in which animals operate,
yeah,
then one solution to that may have looked like place cells. And in
yeah,
fact, Howard Eichenbaum, the late place cell like guru, he called them all over the place cells,
yeah,
famously,
E-
because place cells
yeah,
are place cells only for spatial location very few
yeah,
times. Rest of the time, they just localized firing patterns for any quantity you like.
yeah. I mean, it just feels. I'm not a neuroscientist kind of guy, so it feels like place cells sort of a tactical um, invention in the sense that
Okay.
it gets you up and going, but strategically it might actually prevent you going places. I'm just making a grand statement, but let me ask you another
So
question.
well, before
Yeah,
we get to the question, though, I
yeah,
actually think not because it's not universal, right?
yeah,
So place cells are just basically, temporally sparse firing patterns, and
yeah.
they are not. I mean, despite the name, there's also time cells and place cells, and
Oh
they
yeah,
have, there's enough heterogeneity even in the definition that it's not restrictive.
yeah.
Like
But it's
it's not
hardware
that we're
though. It's hardware, not
it's not
software.
hardware. It is
No?
actually not.
Okay.
No, no, no. That's the difference. So place cells are
Okay.
really not a hardware issue. It's not like there's. So you
Okay.
can you can invent an architecture that does only place cell like behavior, and you can
Ah,
wire it to your system. But in
okay.
the biological brain, place cells are like almost like a software phenomenon. It's a
Oh, I
firing
see.
pattern. And the architecture doesn't have to be chain-like. It can actually be
Yeah.
much more feed forward, feedback, and the
Hmm.
activity pattern, the next level, can still look like place cells.
Right.
And that's a
Right.
very important difference.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you another question, Kanaka. So I don't think it's in your this paper, but do you think consciousness will emerge as well from this process?
Oh, I'm not touching that one. Not gonna touch that one. It's too early in my career. Not gonna touch
Yeah.
that one. I'm going
That's
as
fine.
far as cognitive flexibility. And that's
That's-
a nice try though. Nice try.
because I mean, so the AI debate seems to be getting more severe. We have Nobel laureates coming out and saying in 5 years humanity is done. We won't have any humans because of AI. And others like me say, yeah, I see nothing that threatens me in AI. But I think the linchpin here is consciousness. So from a theoretical perspective, if one can prove consciousness is a fundamental property that doesn't emerge from data, then that has some implications. But if it does emerge, I mean, if we can demonstrably show consciousness could emerge from data, experiences, and so on and so forth, then we are on a slippery slope here. I know that you don't want to touch this, but I just,
So I can
yeah,
touch pieces of this. So
yeah,
I can
yeah,
kind of eat around the meat of it,
yeah, yeah,
if I may be so bold. So if I didn't want to touch the word consciousness because it's so heavily loaded, we
yeah.
can talk about things like, safe applications of artificial. So there's no doubt, right? Like independent of which side of the fence you are on, whether you're kind of a doomer or you're more of an AI optimist. I happen to be an AI optimist.
Yeah.
Either way, nobody debates the fact that models are getting smarter. They're getting
Yes.
better, they're getting more powerful. And that, there's always a downside to any technology, right? And the downside needs to be addressed through open attempts to share data, by deep investigation into what makes these models tick, by talking amongst various people that both build these models and use these models. I
Hmm.
think that all of these are still are happening. So I don't see any sign in the field that says, oh my God, we're completely doomed because we have this massive
Hmm.
blind spot. That's not
Hmm.
happening. Now, if you were to say, okay, are these machines going to get conscious? I don't know what that actually means.
Yeah.
If you're going to say, are they
We don't
getting
have
more?
a definition
No,
yet.
we
Yeah.
don't even, right?
Yeah.
If you were to say, are these artificial agents or artificial models or artificial intelligence, is that going to get smarter and better? Undoubtedly, like every day. It is. It
Yes.
absolutely is. But that doesn't necessarily make them malevolent. What it makes it is probably something that is on par with, I don't know, a cat or us, or
Hmm.
something that we want to work with without being, clunky about it. Like my
Hmm.
Roomba drives me crazy every day. I would like for it not to drive me crazy every day.
Hmm.
So,
Did you see that MIT study, your competing university in Cambridge, that showed that people who do a lot of chat GPT, it doesn't have to be chat GPT, any LLM
yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
their brain ultimately shows no activity. And so are we sort of, our IQ has been growing for a long
Yeah,
time, 100
that's
years.
right. That's right.
We might have hit a threshold and now we might be going back to zero in
No,
some
I
ways.
actually think it's like
Yes.
it's a little bit of an evolutionary pressure at this point,
Yeah.
right? Like with this new tech, I can understand the urge to be lazy about it. I can imagine it, right? Like I can imagine, like I'm getting lazier with, I don't know, the brute force debugging of individual lines of code that I used to be able to do.
Yeah.
And then that laziness already was there as soon as I started popping sentences into Stack Exchange and somebody would help me, right? Now,
Yeah.
Stack Exchange on crack is ChatGPT or one of those
Mm.
co-pilots. Um,
Mm.
but I am far from turning into like a vibe coder, right? It's just not going to happen. So I
Yeah.
think it's going to be one of those things of saying, well, just because, I mean, just because there's the ability to write down pieces that I used to memorize, is
Mm.
that made me intrinsically lazy? I don't think so, right? I just think that it's a certain pressure to make ourselves a little bit better or think better or use it better. You know what I mean? Like just use it for
Yeah.
better purposes.
Yeah. I mean, it might be lazy, but it's also, I mean, for nearly 100,000 years, I'm just looking at Homo sapiens, um, we thrived with threats. There was an animal trying to eat us.
That's right.
You go look for a water hole, and there's something else there, a crocodile or something. We thrived on threats and trying to solve tactical problems for a long time. Now you sit in your nice office and fire up ChatGPT, say, throw me any question, and I'll answer you. That's not a threat. That's not a challenge. Your brain albeit it is using only 20 watts compared to 3 nuclear power plants that that the
Mhm.
search company is building, to
Yeah.
fire all these things up. Still 20 watts. Yeah, you could turn that 20-watt bulb off at some point because everything is in front of you. I mean, you just feed it back.
So everything isn't though, right?
Yeah.
Everything isn't, it really isn't. It's like such a powerful brainstormer, right? This
Mm.
high-end brainstormer has appeared. It's actually amplified the environment. It has broadened the environment in which me, the deep agent, is now functioning. Now it's like saying, aha, it's like going out to play pickleball, and all of
Yeah.
a sudden Serena Williams has shown up. That's what this is, right?
She won't be good at it. She will
But
hit it out all the
some
time.
transferable skills, right? From
Yeah.
tennis to this, or what, it's that level. But the analogy applies in that now
Yes.
it's up to me to say, okay, I'm just gonna, I don't know, do rallies with her, in
Yes.
which case my brain will show nothing,
Yes. That's
right?
true.
Or I could really use it as a brainstorming partner to say, okay, well, there's literature that I wasn't able to keep up with. I am
Mm.
now. There are problem angles that I didn't quite know how to put into words, or so,
Mm.
those types of things. Like there's uses to these agents that are simply astonishing.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's a whole science to even trying to understand that we
Mhm.
built a system that is this incredible, and we
Yeah.
don't know how it works.
We
And
don't
so
know how it
now to
works.
even
Yeah.
understand it like an organism, right? It's kind of like that. We've discovered this other species. So in some sense, that's
Yeah.
that's the enriched environment. I think
Yeah.
our IQ is going to go up. Like I come back playing pickleball with Serena Williams. Trust me, my game's gone up.
Yeah. Yeah. So as an educator, I'm going to just ask one more thing on this, and then we'll go to the next paper. Uh, there's a lot of implications for education. Um, I think you went to engineering school. I went to engineering school very close to you, 15 years before that. Um, and these engineering schools in India, for instance, they teach you just engineering. I, I didn't. I had one economics class and one psychology class, I think, of in 5 years. Whereas in the US, we have this liberal education that people learn all sorts of different things, and that gives them cognitive flexibility, I would imagine,
Yes.
in many ways. And so in some sense, let me ask you this, and then you can you can say whatever you think it's the right thing. But um, are we sort of reducing cognitive flexibility as we go forward in this AI wave, in the sense that there are people out there saying these jobs don't exist anymore? Yeah, don't go into computer programming, for instance. Um, this from an education perspective, how do you think about this?
So you're asking someone that has the incredible privilege of being an academic, right? So I can really actually answer this question without worrying about the bottom line of some company or some flinty billionaire, you see.
Yes.
So I can actually say, like, in fact, in 2030, I doubt that we're going to be thinking about large language models and things, right? Like, so we're now in the position in academia, in the education system, to be able
Hmm.
to look for the less popular buzzworthy idea, but one
Hmm.
that comes completely from left field, right? From somebody who did economics, going, wait a second, I'm going to ask you a zeroth order question, maybe about the 20-watt question. We still don't know how to put realistic energy constraints, mind you, in these agents, right? And
Yeah.
somebody from economics could come in and say, hey, but
Hmm.
what if we wrote down this optimization, slightly this way? Or we
Yeah.
incorporated something about ATP and phosphorylation in these models that are
Hmm.
impoverished, but how about this one feature?
Yeah.
That there's some kind of cycling of ATP that causes these things to be somewhat self-sustaining. That kind of
Hmm.
weird idea, right? That's what that is going to, that's what that is, I think. I don't think we're going to be um, talking about this for this particular buzzy niche for very, very long.
Yeah, I agree, Kanaka. So I think we are going through a phase where there's a lot of uncertainty.
Yes.
There's a lot of money to be made, and hence, the commentary
Yeah.
is going to be optimizing capital infusion. Let me leave it at that.
Very
So
well
I'm going
put. Very well put.
so let me go into another paper, which is extremely interesting as well. So POCO, scalable neural forecasting through population conditioning. So you say here predicting future neural activity is a core challenge in modeling brain dynamics, with applications ranging from scientific investigation to closed loop neurotechnology. While recent models of population activity emphasize interpretability and behavioral decoding, neural forecasting, particularly across multi-session spontaneous recordings, remains unexplored. So if you get the details of this, I want to sort of get the context. So what do you mean by neural forecasting?
Essentially, the equivalent of next token prediction, except in time series. So
Okay.
what does that look like? Time series forecasting. That is a hard and essentially like fundamentally unsolved problem. And our ability to perform behaviors smoothly relies on the brain's ability to be able to do that a little bit regularly.
Yeah.
And so there's a certain regularity in the firing patterns of the neurons inside the brains of animals,
Hmm.
of biological systems. And that regularity manifests itself in a variety of different ways, right? It's not just products of sines and cosines, but the
Yeah.
fact that even though there's like billions of neurons, activity patterns, if you look at them in the right coordinate space, look like they're lower dimensional than the full possible dimensionality they can occupy. So
Hmm.
every neuron isn't independent from every other neuron. So pattern of covariation in the electrical activity of neurons
Hmm.
causes them to behave in much more regular fashions. So what
Hmm.
does that mean? So that means that if we can exploit that regularity, we should be able to do better than just the next token or the next millisecond of neural
Hmm.
activity. Because there's
Yeah.
something regular, right? Like there's something regular about the way our joints move and our bodies move.
Is it sort of pattern finding some ways?
Is it a sort of a pattern finding? Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So
Those patterns are not
yeah.
as super low dimensional. They're not exactly things that are like limit cycles, or
Right. Right.
they're, let's say, many limit cycles together.
So I don't quite know the numbers, Kanaka. So 86 billion neurons for the Homo sapien brain. The mouse has like 86,000 or something like that. And so you put a mouse in some sort of maze,
Yeah.
and then you can see. Okay, so if I understand this correctly, Kanaka, I don't think I do. Suppose you have Poco, you
Mhm.
say here, it could actually predict what the neuronal activity is going to be in
That is
that
correct.
mouse. Okay.
That is correct. Okay, so a couple of things here, right?
Yeah.
So neuroscience has undergone this explosive, uh, acceleration in our ability to be able to monitor electrical activity of many neurons at once in awake and behaving animals.
Yeah.
And so they can do that with, let's say, cellular resolution precision in small nervous systems. So, for example, in a larval zebrafish or in fruit flies, you
Hmm.
can literally look at the activity of every neuron while the animal is doing something.
Hmm.
And those only have about 100,000 neurons.
Yeah.
Then you go up to the mouse or the rat, and they have millions of neurons.
Yeah.
Our ability to sample them isn't 100%. You can
Hmm.
only sample like a fraction of them, like a few thousand at once.
Hmm.
But that we're still pushing the envelope on it, right? My experimental colleagues are making incredible advances every day. So there's
Hmm.
literally our equivalent of your scaling graphs in neuroscience. I can
Hmm.
send it to you after the podcast if you like, but there are people who've plotted the number of neurons you can simultaneously record as a function of time in years. And
Yeah. Yeah.
that seems to be going up as well. But we're never going to record all of the neurons in the brain of a human for a very, very, very long time. Okay, but if we knew the patterns that are regular, then could we autocomplete the ones that we don't have access to?
Hmm.
That's
Okay.
the thing. So let's say you have a mouse let's do the human case, right? Like, let's say you have a human. So if you wanted to do the brain control interfaces or the neurotech application, and let's say I was about to take a fall because I have some neurological condition, then the pattern of electrical activity in my brain doesn't, before the fall, match the activity pattern that my brain needs to produce to arrest the fall. A device that knew the predictive the time series that could be produced by the neurons in the brain could play that into the brain. But you would only play that if you were able to predict that forward. Before being able to record it. So
I'm thinking, Kanaka, I don't know if this is the right direction to think about, but from a therapeutic perspective, so suppose we can predict, I'm thinking Parkinson's disease or something like that.
Exactly right.
Suppose we can predict, and then we can sort of intervene on those signals some way. We might have a cure.
That's
that
right.
way, right?
Actually, what you're describing exists.
Yeah.
So for Parkinson's, we know exactly the one locus in which neurons are dying, causing Parkinson's. And what they end up doing is called deep brain stimulation. It's and it's amazing. It'll blow your mind if I tell you what exactly it even does. It's this one electrode. You jam it into that place, and you play one square wave pulse. And it makes a big difference to the person.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And deep brain stimulation is also used profitably for major depressive disease, for OCD, for a few conditions like this. So are we done with this problem? No, because it's still one-dimensional signal. It works for a few conditions for which we know the exact locus. Right? And then it just happened to work. But then there's several other conditions for which we don't know what the right patterns will be. So for example, many conditions like, for example, cognitive inflexibility, right? That I just discussed in the first piece of this conversation. So a lot of neuropsychiatric conditions, be it mood disorders like major depressive disease or motor disorders like Parkinson's disease, all have cognitive inflexibility. What does that do to a person? That makes it harder for that person to participate in conversations or be in systems where they have to interact with other people making sounds and juggle those signals at once. That leads them to be more socially isolated, which then causes this thing to go into a cycle. So social isolation works together with cognitive inflexibility, and then it really affects their quality of life over time. We don't know where cognitive flexibility relies in the brain. But if we knew, we could write it in, but I promise you it's not a one-dimensional signal.
It's not a one-dimensional signal. So, I mean, generalizability is always an issue, but can you take a model, X, and use model-specific data and say, POCO can predict what's going to happen in that brain and design in sort of an intervention that's specific to that model. We don't actually care about generalizability at that stage. I mean, as long as you can, sort of train the model for that specific person, X, right? So that is possibly a favorable intervention in some ways.
I think it would be tremendously powerful. It would be tremendously powerful. What gives us the confidence that we might be on the right track is actually a paper that comes right before POCO. It's making the rounds of review hell at the moment. But the thing that
those reviewers, you can't.
Basically us types. But in a paper that should accompany this paper in a timely manner at some point, we had made this discovery that despite, so even without any task that animals are doing, there are just animals sort of hanging out, wiggling their tails, thinking about their thoughts and dreams, just open, spontaneous behavior.
Yeah.
And if you look at the neurons in the brains of these animals, they're very, very variable patterns of activity. There's no task to regularize over them. Their tails are wiggling at different time points. There's no relationship when you look at the level of neural outputs, which are these firing patterns, or behavioral outputs, which are these timing of the tail wiggles and so forth.
Yeah.
But we found that if we were to do the right decomposition in the space of the inputs, so going from the outputs, if we
Mm.
can deconvolve the inputs, which are
Yeah.
the inter-area communication principles
Yeah.
between interacting brain areas, if we
Different
were
parts of the
to
brain, different parts
different
of
parts of the
the
brain.
brain circuits. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so if we
Yeah.
were to cast this problem in terms of source currents or
Yeah.
inputs or information flow between interacting brain parts,
Yeah.
then those things are much more conserved or consistent statistically across individuals.
Mm.
So you could take a mode from one individual and a mode from another individual and combine them
Yeah.
without a major loss of information.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that's actually helpful, which is sort
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
why we started to think about if there's so much regularity in the space of these current flows between brain areas,
Mm.
then we might be able to exploit that feature to be able to make these predictions forward in time. So POCO makes, first of all, POCO is
Yeah.
amazing because, you know, my graduate student cracked this big problem and he can forecast 16 steps into the future. That's pretty
Yes.
cool.
Yeah.
And he could, but then we want to say, okay, well, what makes this feature possible and what it can do? So we
Mm.
now want to do this sort of closed loop intervention in an animal that POCO hasn't seen before. So there's
Yeah.
training data that comes from neural activity from so many animals. Now we want to say, okay, here's a time series produced by POCO. Can it
Mm.
fix a problem in an animal that it has not seen before in training data?
Mm.
It's almost like saying, can we invent a BCI for a baby fish?
Yeah. Yeah. So a mouse brain or a zebrafish brain, if I understand this correctly, can I correct me if I'm wrong? There appears to be a lot of commonality. So we could think about generalizability in a slightly different context in this sense, right? So the brain, it's like an IBM computer running Windows 11. There cannot be as much variation in there, right? Is that the way to think about it?
So this would be the optimistic take. We
Yes.
would love for this to be true. We would love for this to be true so much that there's convergent evolution and that is very tractable and we could write down this equation. That would be amazing. Actually,
Yeah.
I don't think it is quite that true. There's a
Yes.
lot of degeneracy. And there's a lot
Uh,
of degeneracy at every level. We've been
yeah.
trying to concretify this problem in another sort of separate thread in the lab. But that piece really deals with this degeneracy. How do you think
Mm.
about the diversity or the spread, which
Mm.
you as an engineer would call a dispersion, or almost like the
Yes.
variation across behaviors, across architectures,
Yeah.
across neural activity, and other things, right? Like you can imagine that degeneracy could be mapped across any index, including social
Mm.
context,
Yeah.
environmental context, architectural priors. So there's going to be a lot of degeneracy. What I think would be a big win, not quite the ultimate win that you're looking for as this sort of grand theory of the brain.
Mm.
Something before that would be the ability to take this kind of predictive time series model, let's say from POCO, right?
Yeah.
And then we use it to auto-complete
Yeah.
data when we don't have data. So for
Yeah.
example, suppose we knew that for me to take a fall, there's a part of the brain that's malfunctioning. But
Yeah.
I don't have data to know how to correct it because it's
Mm.
either an intractable brain region or I can't record from it or no one has enough data. But we do have data from thousands and thousands of animal brains.
Mm.
If there's something common evolutionarily and there's
Yeah.
something regular about those activity patterns, can these animal brains be used to autocomplete where
Yes.
we don't have this data? That
So
would be incredible.
yeah. So I mean, I'm very attracted to the therapeutic aspects of this, Kanaka. So I mean, humans, when we get older, a fall is a big issue. A single fall could be fatal. A single fall make you uh, not good after that. And so we have wearable technologies now. So suppose we can measure, POCO or something similar to that, and have interventions that allow the human to cope with that. I think that would be quite powerful,
I think
isn't
it
it?
would be incredibly
Yeah.
powerful. Like catch a pattern of activity that is predictive of a fall that hasn't yet happened.
Yeah.
Like currently, we have a way to arrest the fall if you have an aura that a fall is about to happen or whatever, right? That involves like it's not quite retrospective, but it's not as far prospective. But if we
Right.
knew the various events that can't, I wouldn't say causal at all. I'm just saying that could consider, we're only looking for correlation that
Hmm.
say, okay, here's an activity pattern, here's the activity pattern, here's another
Hmm.
activity pattern. If
Yeah.
A, B, C occur, I'm fine.
Yeah.
But if A, B, B occur and I fall, then before, if the machine could predict that, okay,
Hmm.
if there's a delay between A, B, and then the next thing is a bit longer, it tends to be B again,
Hmm.
then it plays the corrective pattern for C instead of B. That could save a lot of lives.
Right. So there's also a time component there, right? So
Right.
suppose I fall in January and I don't fall till September, then there is some information there. Maybe the fall was very tactical. I don't know. I don't know if it's the right term. But if I fall every 2 months or something, yeah, that's something definitely needs intervention, right? So, I mean, we have wearable technologies now that can collect all this data. And in some sense, I'm quite surprised that these things haven't really gone further. I mean, everybody's doing this chat GPT thing. For me, this is crazy. I mean, we could actually help people
Yeah. So
with this
there is a
technology.
lot of there's not nearly enough. There's some
Yeah.
investment in neurotechnology. BCI is going to be a like billions of dollars of industry. There's a few things standing in the way. The things that are standing in the way, first of all, the zero hardware problem, right?
Hmm.
So brain neurons talk electricity, but poorly.
Yeah.
They talk to other neurons. So we don't have the right units to play into them.
Hmm.
We can make lofty claims and companies make lofty claims and like that, but we need channels that are very fine and we need to put them in the right place and play the right pattern over time so that the neurons in the brain can understand it and then not rot around it or mount a massive inflammation process and reject this extra set of wires. So
Yeah.
really, the problems are actually much more pedestrian than we're
Hmm.
talking. The problems currently are like significantly in the hardware domain.
Yeah.
Then we're talking about the regulatory barriers around collecting those data, analyzing those data, and
Privacy.
that
Privacy
privacy,
becomes a big issue.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Regulatory burdens are huge, but
Yeah.
nothing is stopping us from developing the software, which is what we do, right? Like, is to say, like, can we write down the models that will make this possible?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many fine wires industry can come up with if the
Hmm.
pattern these wires have to play into the brain aren't predictive with the right timing to help these people.
Yeah.
And then the fall prevention, yes, it's a very big one. But if you
Hmm.
ask patients often talk about other problems. I know this from personal experience. I have a family member that has Parkinson's.
Yeah.
And the tremors don't bother her. She says the tremors
Oh.
bother you, they don't bother me so much. What would bother her
Huh.
is the inability to multitask. If she's holding a cup and has to open the fridge, it takes her
Right.
a
Right.
while.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Even initiating movements that bothers her.
Hmm.
The ability to say, okay, am I a little bit more irritable? Why can't I tell I'm more irritable? That bothers
Hmm.
her. Do we know where in the brain that lives? No. But if we knew, do we even know how to correct it? And that's
Hmm.
what POCO should be for. So yes to the fall, because then that's a big old motor signal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. But
Yeah.
I'm talking about the next step, which is thinking
Yeah. Yeah.
about the cognitive issues and
More
really
subtle, more
subtle,
subtle things that we
subtle
can.
things that are
Yeah.
distributed in the brain.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be this one wire, right? If we had a bunch of them, then
Yeah.
and there's people that are developing those powerful technologies for the
Right.
hardware problem. But what do we play into those wires is
Yeah.
really on the backs of models like this, I think. It'll be these and and then now I'm going to say something on the other side of the language models. Cocoa is a little bit like a language model, except in the time series domain. And so yes, I think if it can be used for a translational purpose, then I think that will be incredible.
Yeah, I think it has a lot of potential in many ways. I'm mostly interested in the therapeutic effects of this. Excellent. Kind of, yeah. Thanks so much for spending time with me.
Of course. No, thank you. This was a pleasure.
Thank you.